On November 1st, 2022, the most celebrated and controversial filmmaker of our time, Quentin Tarantino, released his first non-fiction book, Cinema Speculation. As some of you may remember, he published his debut book, a novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, last year, and is now fulfilling the second half of a two-part deal with HarperCollins, if my sources serve me correctly. Both of these, along with his Video Archives podcast, appear to be harbingers of the director's coming retirement as he transitions from making films to discussing them. At this point, I should insert a personal caveat that I've never been much of a Tarantino movie fan. I think him discussing films is probably more interesting than a good deal of what he's made. But what is he talking about here? The book consists of 13 chapters, each titled of the film they're dedicated to, which are Bullet 68, Dirty Harry from 71, Deliverance from 72, The Getaway also 72, The Outfit 73, Sisters 72, Daisy Miller 74, Taxi Driver 76, Rolling Thunder from 77, Paradise Alley 78, Escape from Alcatraz, and Hardcore at 79, and finally The Funhouse from 1981. Mixed into these analysis chapters are an opening recount of his memories going to theaters at that time in the early 70s, and some humorous incidents along with takes from his childhood, like how they should have showed Butch and Sundance getting shot, which he inexplicably still stands by. Another titled Second String Samurai, which he uses to dive into the Los Angeles film critics of the time and how they co-built the careers of the Roger Corman protege filmmakers, how bad Sheila Benson was, how good Kevin Thomas was, and the feud he had with the author, along with the trivial details that are so ubiquitous to this book and constantly enriching your cinematic knowledge. There's also a New Hollywood in the 70s chapter, which covers the clash between the early anti-establishment auteurs and the later generation movie brats. You also have an actual cinema speculation chapter, which hypothesizes what Taxi Driver would have been if Brian De Palma directed it, and a closing footnote which I'll cover more later. Those of you who follow QT closely, as his fans call him, might recall about 2 years ago when he posted some reviews on the website for the theater he owns, the New Beverly. Some of these reviews were later taken down, though still accessible by means of the Wayback Machine, but they have re-emerged in parts of this book. He has noted that this is a project he's worked on for years, and you don't just have to take his word for it. The proof is out there if you've been paying attention. Now, just because some of this has had previous exposure isn't to say the entire thing is only recycled material. Even the reviews of films that were previously published are longer and more in-depth here, and all are more than a simple one-page opinion. There are opportunities to expand on a number of other topics. Among a number of things, he uses Bullet and The Getaway as a two-part character study of Steve McQueen, including everything from his doing nothing while doing much acting style to the hidden key to his success that Neil McQueen was. With The Dirty Harry, he juxtaposes it to the political scene of the time and what it meant to the older generation. For The Outfit, he writes about how conventional and safe 80s films were, Bill Murray versus Chevy Chase comedies, or how Heat is the best Parker adaptation, and how the ending messed up that film. Which I'll add, the last statement is a common criticism of that movie, which I disagree with, and I think it comes from not fully understanding what that film is or intends to be. When he has a chapter titled Sisters, directed by Brian De Palma, he doesn't, of course, simply talk about that movie. He uses it to discuss the director's career and mindset and style. In the Daisy Miller entry, he winds up giving us a short biography of Bela Lugosi and his struggle with drug addiction. He explains how Taxi Driver was inspired by The Searchers and the controversy that led to Harvey Keitel's casting, and Paradise Alley includes a fair dose of Rocky. And the entire time, this is a tour of the decade's cinema, personally guided by Quentin himself, as he includes where and when he was when he saw these movies and experiences he's had with those involved. This personal journey is also what he closes the book on with a final chapter, the Floyd footnote. This footnote, which I'll put in air quotes, is something that could have been adapted into a compelling short story. He takes us back in time to a man he knew as a boy, who might not have been a real friend, but he was obviously an influence on the 15-year-old Quentin and someone he looked up to. Django Unchained still doesn't deserve that Oscar, but when he brings us to this personal account and ends on that stage winning the Oscar, it gives it a different significance. As for the technical aspects of this book, it's written in an engaging, conversational style that has the effect of sitting across from him and listening to his passionate rants. As a filmmaker, I've always felt his weak points have been in his writing more than direction, but at some parts of this book, I would have to admit that was well said, or typed. It should go without saying that this book used the same language he uses everywhere else and is quite adult, so I'll put that out there for those of you who are wondering about that. His fanboy legionaries will probably rush out to buy it, but I don't know how they'll actually respond to it. It's better served for someone who is already a viewer of these types of films and overall cinephile than simply a fan of his. It's nice to learn from it, but it's better when you're already familiar with what he's talking about. The opinions I've included here are only a handful of the thousands expressed in the book. Nothing stands alone, and the uber-knowledgeable Tarantino surrounds everything with background, context, and comparisons. He branches out into another branch and into another, into an interweaving foliage of cinematic theory and history. Cinema speculation is the culmination of a lifelong commitment to studying and loving movies. It is guaranteed to educate you on films and might even increase your enthusiasm for them.